The O's lost another series, and to a team of the Detroit Tigers that are playing good baseball. And they're not out of this race right now. But I think it's gotten to a point on social media and just around, fans are going, well, wait a minute, is Baltimore going to be in danger of missing the postseason? That's really what people are asking. I'm going to be honest. If that happens, we are seeing one of the most historical collapses in Major League Baseball history. And to give you guys an update of where we are at this given point in time, Baltimore sits 3 games out of the AL East. That's going to be an uphill battle for them to catch the Yankees. Could they? Absolutely. But for the playoff spot, they are 7 games currently up on the Detroit Tigers and the Seattle Mariners. They own the season series over Seattle. Boston has now dropped back to 9 games in the standings. So really, Detroit, the Orioles got to play them again here this weekend coming up in Baltimore. But guys, they are in a very, very good position regardless to make the postseason. But I get it. Almost getting no hit up in Detroit didn't feel good. Almost being perfect gamed. And actually, former Orioles prospect Brendan Hennefy came on in the 8th inning to throw you some 97-mile-an-hour, hey, how you doing, sinkers. That was a guy I wish that the Orioles kept. And they let him go in free agency. He was one of my teammates. His sinker moves like this much. And he was coming back from Tommy John. That's a whole different story. But I love Hanny. He's a great dude. But, guys, I think there is a panic meter in Baltimore. I can sense it. You know, you guys know my philosophy on this. There's so many more different parts that go into it. But the Orioles to miss the postseason, if they miss it, this will go down as, again, one of the biggest collapses. And then there would be changes. Like, no doubt there'd be changes because it would be one of the most embarrassing stretches to finish out a year.
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt, there would be changes. It's just, like you said, it would be a historical collapse. Like, this is not something where on my panic meter, I'm sitting there thinking this is a legit possibility. I think this is insanely outside, like you said, historic. Like, if the Orioles find a way to miss the playoffs with, like you said, it's like 7-game lead with 12 to play, then you got to win 5 games. That's excluding other teams. Your magic number goes down if they lose. So you'd have to lose. I guess every team would have to win out, the Mariners or the Tigers, and you'd have to lose 5 or only win 5. I just don't see that happening. I mean, it would have to be historic. But the Orioles have, balls in their court. They can put all this away. Take the first 2 against San Fran. Just win that series, and suddenly it's almost a guarantee you're in. So balls in their court. Is it time to panic that they're going to miss the playoffs? I don't think so. Is there some worry, though, about how the team's playing? Of course. But as I think we've said a million times on the show, it's all about getting in.
Yeah.
All you have to do is get in. Once you get in, let the rest fall where it goes. But it's all about getting in and giving yourself an opportunity.
And right now, for the standings, the Orioles have the number 1 wild card spot, which means that they would host the wild card round in Baltimore, and a best of 3 would be at Camden Yards as it sits. Now, the team that they're fighting with, which they also hold the advantage over, is the Kansas City Royals, who are 2 back of the Orioles. And then Minnesota is 4.5 back. And you guys just saw the news. Cole Irvin was claimed by the Minnesota Twins. Wouldn't that be something if Cole Irvin faces the Orioles at the end of the season and just absolutely shoves, and somehow that impacts the Orioles? I would hate that, but baseball has a weird way of working. We're not going to dive deep into that one, but I think the bigger part is get in and see what happens. And guys, I talked to you about this. I know some people were getting very colorful responses when I talked about the defense on social media, Brad.
Yeah.
Since when did we find it okay? When I know people complain about hitting and pitching a lot, and I get it, but those are the 2 most things that will be consistently inconsistent for teams.
Yeah.
Like, I want to give context here. The Arizona Diamondbacks were the 24th ranked team in team ERA going into the postseason last year. 24th.
Yep.
They were the best defensive team in baseball last year.
Yeah, and if you go back to the really good years when Buck Showalter was coaching the team, as far as the Orioles are concerned, they were ranked number 1 defense. The Orioles were when they went to the ALCS. I believe pitching was also not all that great that year, if I'm not mistaken, but defense was absolutely stellar. And that's one of the big reasons why they were even in the ALCS to begin with. Unfortunately, the Royals were tearing the cover off the ball, and the pitching weaknesses ended up showing up all the way into the ALCS. So that defense got them all the way there.
Yeah, I mean, it plays, and I'm even going to look at all this because it really does grind my gears a little bit. So last year, Texas and Arizona, teams that were middle of the pack ERA wise. Well, you just heard me say 24th. Texas was middle of the pack. They were the 1 and 2 teams defensively for fielding. The World Series the year before in 2022. Okay, Astros, Phillies. You guys want to take a guess of where they ranked in the 2022 season?
Top 5.
Phillies were 4th. Astros were 7th. So 7th was still the lowest number right there. Should I continue on? 2021. Guys, who won the World Series? The Braves. Who did they beat? The Astros. What were the Astros ranked?
3.
First. Who won the World Series? The Braves. Where were they ranked? 3rd defensively. So all these teams that not one outside the top 7 right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So should I keep going?
Do it.
Let's keep moving.
Let's go through.
I think we got the point. Here's my thing.
Okay.
The Orioles right now defensively are ranked 17th, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
The Orioles, as we
sounds
speak at the moment, when I looked at it last, sugar whammy. The Orioles now have moved up to 14th. now.
Okay, so not great.
Progress.
The other thing is that last year's Rookie of the Year and MVP favorite up until the All-Star break is now leading the league in errors all by himself. The American League, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
But nevertheless, Gunnar Henderson has been a big problem, and one of the big issues for the defense has been the amount of errors he's also been contributing to the team.
Gunner's errors are part of him needing to work out things playing the shortstop position. There's no doubt about it.
But it needs improvement.
But it needs that's the part. It does need improvement. There are plays that he should make that he's not. And it's not that they're the hardest plays. He makes the hardest plays look easy. It's the routine plays or plays that he gets himself into trouble, whether it's his footwork, whether it's the positioning, because there's still a lot of shifting. Whatever it may be, that's correctable. I'll also throw in that the Orioles have had a lot of injuries so far this season. So obviously, the thought in general here is when you lose guys that are big caliber players, Westberg, that was your third baseman. Trying to figure out another guy. Ramon was doing okay. Could have been better, but he's doing fine. Jorge Mateo is your best defensive player that you then have out of that group. He's lost for the season. It's a big part of it. And then you have a rookie that has not played actually hasn't played one season at second base in any level at the minor leagues. He's played games at second base, not a full season. Now you're being asked to play at the big league level. They don't have the regulars there, Brad. So to your point, Gunnar is that supposed to be that stable force, and it's at the most important position in the infield, and he's having trouble with it, Zach.
And I mean, you talk about those guys. I think something that people are really undervaluing was how massive just the stride that Ryan Mountcastle has taken at first base. He was one of the best defensive first basemen. He was playing like it this year. If you watched him, how many times did he save? He picks one out of nowhere. He goes up and gets in, puts the tag on. He was saving this team in so many ways defensively. You can talk about his power, the inconsistencies offensively at times, but defensively, Ryan Mountcastle was as solid as it got. And you start to see that as an impact. Ryan O'Hearn, he's never been known as a defensive specialist. They're balls that you felt like he should catch that end up turning into errors. Innings extend, unearned runs. So it really does get to the point where you've lost Westy. You lost Mateo. Urias obviously goes down, who is a Gold Glover. And then you have Ryan Mountcastle, the guy that's supposed to, when those guys mess up a little bit, don't put it on the money, he bails them out when needed. So you lose all of that at once. It's pretty tough.
Well, and that's the point I try to make here. And I just read you off the list here. Even as I went further down, there hasn't been a World Series champion that's been outside the top 10 in fielding in the last 6 years. I didn't even keep going. The point being is, for the Orioles and any team, you're going to have your slumps. And it's been an extended slump for Baltimore pitching and hitting. It's been especially hitting. Pitching's actually been pretty solid. I got to say, they have started to round into form. But the one thing you can't give away is extra outs. And missing Mountcastle and Mateo and Westberg, your Arias now, like all that matters. But what we're trying to say is don't underestimate defense. Go look at that Red Sox series. They didn't play clean that last game. They lose in extra innings. Everyone looks at Keegan Aiken, but if Rivera makes the play earlier in the game, you have a lead going into the ninth for the Orioles. It happened in the fifth inning. There's little moments each game. Give good teams opportunities. They're going to beat you because pitching and hitting is not always going to be there. Your defense, every coach in the big league is going to tell you, any college coach, anything in high school, honestly, you play high school, the team that makes the fewest mistakes usually wins the game. That's just the reality of the sport. So I wanted to say that. And the last thing for the Orioles, I saw a comment, what about with Coulombe and Westberg and Grayson? Will the reinforcements get back in time? We just saw that Jordan Westberg is now resumed hitting activities. Ryan Mountcastle also is another one that's down in Sarasota. That's probably the least optimistic. But guys, Danny Coulombe is rehabbing. It looks like his return is going to be before the end of the regular season. Jordan Westberg, you hope he can get back, but games in Norfolk and AAA end on September 22nd. So rehab opportunities, he's against the clock, and I don't know how well he's going to be built up in the next 6 days. So we got to monitor that. And Grayson Rodriguez is the one that we just don't fully know. What's he going to be built up to? I think that Grayson will be back, but we don't know if that's going to be for the last week of September or it's going to be for that first outing in the postseason. I hope he's back for the last week. I would hate for his first outing to have to be with everything on the line. So that's where it is. I am hoping for Baltimore you can get those guys back because that's at the end of the day. You get your studs. You get who you can. And let's make no mistake, Danny Coulombe probably could have been an all-star for the Orioles. Jordan Westberg was an all-star. Grayson Rodriguez can pitch like an all-star. That's three big pieces right there. You get those guys back, you're going to have a big boost to how your team looks, but you got to get those guys back. And the update is it looks hopeful. We just don't know. You hope that there's no setbacks. Lats, you heard Yoni come on and talk about it. It can be tough. Danny Coulombe's going to have to just keep pitching through whatever tolerance he has. That's kind of what it is coming back from the injury. He's fine enough, right? Mm-hmm. But it's pitching through tolerance. And then obviously Jordan Westberg, get that wrist right for the fracture. If he's good, we're going to rock and roll. So that's where it is. The one thing I want to say about Hyde, I think that's maybe one last point because that's a big talking point. I've heard a lot of people continue to talk about it. I think the Hyde slander sometimes becomes too much because we act like you know what's happening in the locker room when you don't. I'm not saying that Hyde is the best motivator. I'm seeing a comment here. Hyde is not a motivator. I can't speak to everything on what he does on the day-to-day. But what I can speak to is guys like Hyde. We know that Hyde likes to play matchups. And I think a lot of people are quick to discredit what he has accomplished. Now, he's going to be judged for what his team does going into the postseason. Because quite frankly, just like with Corbin Burns, fair to say, Kevin, if the Orioles win some series in the postseason, you think anyone's going to talk about Corbin Burns struggling in August or Brandon Hyde mismanaging games in August or July or wherever month we're in September?
No one's going to care. Remember when we talked about your favorite, Ryan, was Corbin spring training. You loved that. That was your whole thing where no one talks about that now. It was a thing then, but not now. This Orioles team needs to, if they want to have success, you mentioned the defense. That's big. Offensive consistency, but it's just a whole team effort. I mean, we've talked about it. No team wants it right now. If you get hot, like we saw last year with the Diamondbacks, like we saw last year with the Rangers, you can go all the way.
Yep.
But you just have to get there first, and you have to at least pick up some. I'd like to see them pick up a couple more good habits before heading into the postseason. That's my request for them. Couple more good habits, get into the dance, and then see what happens. But obviously right now it's been a bit of a struggle for him, especially with consistency.
Yeah, a lot of guys also like Hyde. Like I talked to him, like even there's nothing that I've heard of everyone going, man, I can't stand that guy. It's not that. Also throw in the fact, Buck Showalter made a good point when I talked to him. Mm-hmm. And I said, hey, do you have a feeling when things go wrong? Like I said, how do you deal with when you feel like the mojo's off, right? How do you get it back? You can't be like Austin Powers and try to drink your mojo or get it back, right? But in all theory, it's all in your head. Whole different story here. You should go watch all the Austin Powers. Kevin, your homework. But in general, to get your mojo, I said, how does that work? And he said, well, Ryan, sometimes, when things happen, sometimes injuries can be too much. But he goes, in some cases, there's not much you can do. It's not that players don't like you. It's just they have personal things. And as a group collectively, you got to find a way to get out of it. There's a lot of good managers out there. Like Buck Showalter is a fantastic manager. But people would say that he fell short in big moments. And sometimes you get cold at the wrong time. Last year, the Mets got injured and they fell off a cliff. So for all the ones that are saying that Brandon Hyde and this team, oh, he's losing, a lot of teams would have fallen off the cliff and not be in a position.
Right.
And Brandon Hyde is the manager of this team. So I want to give credit where that's due. Are there things that I agree with all the time with the team? No. Is there situational execution great right now? No. Do I want to see different matchups at times? Yes. But you still have to give credit. Now we're going to see what the team's made of, but keep that in mind. All the team's injuries. Buck Showalter lost his job because the Mets fell apart after they just had a 100-win season, I believe.
Yeah.
And they lost the division to the Braves that year. So context here. The Orioles, despite their struggles, are still in a position to make the playoffs, and we will address more of those issues as we move closer. But guys, the Orioles are going to make the postseason. And if it doesn't happen, then I'll tell you what, you're talking about cleaning house, the Orioles will clean house if that happens. I can tell you that.
Yep.
Because that is something that is hard to recover.